Hey guys, welcome back to the Veda Mindset podcast. Today I want to talk about emotions because lately I've been feeling a lot of these dense emotions like sadness, anxiety, dread, and it got me thinking about how so many people immediately want to get away from their emotions. They immediately want to push all dense emotions away and try to feel as happy as much as they can. And I learned a while ago that happiness is not it should not be the end goal. Happiness should not be the end goal. And I've been learning for a while how to actually feel your emotions, how to maneuver life with the fact that we are emotional human beings, and how to just come to terms with that, how to come to terms with the dense emotions we experience through this game of life. And I hope in this episode I can cover a lot of the things I practice and some advice I can give you so that maybe you start to learn how to maneuver through your emotions a little bit better. The biggest motivational factor for me when it came to wanting to learn how to, go with my emotions, accept them, was because I no longer wanted to be a prisoner of them. I feel like for a really long time, I lived life through this lens of always wanting to be happy and always wanting to override really, really hard emotions, really, really painful emotions, because I honestly, as a person, I've always felt extremely deeply. I have always felt my emotions so deeply, whether that's an empathic quality. I have been so susceptible to just drowning in them because of how hard I feel my emotions. And because of that, I started to develop this sense of pride, these defense mechanisms in order to constantly override them, to distract myself from the emotions. But then I realized when I did that, it just made me even more scared of feeling the emotions. And so the more you distract yourself from emotions, the more you try to override it. And we're talking about dense emotions here, like the denser ones, the ones that humans don't really love experiencing, whether that's anxiety, pain, fear, dread, guilt, shame. These are specific emotions that nobody has a great time feeling. So I see that when people start distracting themselves from these emotions or overriding it with pride, or just shoving happiness and in when they're actually feeling sad, or trying to act overconfident to regulate for insecurity. When you're doing that, you kind of just make the denser emotion stronger because you're priming your mind to be scared of it even more. So of course, when you're scared of the emotion even more, it's gonna grow and it's gonna come around one way or another. You're gonna feel it eventually. But whenever you push it down or try to override it with different higher emotions that you're not actually feeling, you're just using that as a defense mechanism to override the denser emotions, at one point or another, you're gonna end up feeling those denser emotions, but 10 times more than you originally would have because of how much you try to shove them away. And honestly, I realized this. I realized I was living a life that I really didn't feel free, because a life where you're always shoving away your true emotions, not wanting to feel them, that's not a life of freedom. That's not a life of feeling like you have agency and free will. That's a life of fear. You're scared of your own inner world. And I feel like for me, the moment I feel freedom in my life is accepting everything my inner world wants to show me. And with that came the notion of, how do I honor my emotions? How do I accept myself for everything I'm feeling, maneuver through it without drowning in it and becoming even more sad, more anxious, and more insecure? Because that's everyone's fear. It's they don't want to feel these denser emotions because it might risk them to becoming even more sad, more depressed, just having a lower self-esteem. So they just try to distract themselves away from it as much as they can, thinking that that's the solution, when in reality, that is definitely not the solution, because like I said, your emotions will show up one way or another. And we see this with disease, with mental illness. Your body, your like somatic like responses, like your emotions will come out one way or another. Whether that's through your tears or whether that's through your mental illness or whether that's through your, bodily like functions, injuries, your emotions will show themselves one way or another, which is why I think it's really important to honor the power that they have by allowing yourself to feel it from your own free will instead of letting it hit you at one point down the line in a way that's not the most favorable. And there's one really important point to cover here now that we're like really diving deep into the emotions. I want to preface this by saying that the end goal of life is not happiness. And the moment you take happiness off of the pedestal is the moment you realize the function of emotions, the functions like of being human and what it means to live life. Like, what is the point of life if it's not to feel happy? And that gets me to my next point, which is the point of life is to feel whole and have this underlying feeling of peace that no matter what you go through, you are okay. You will be okay and you will grow from the experience. That is what I live by, because when I used to live by the end goal being happiness, what does that get you? It gets you a life that's not even realistic. Like, you are constantly trying to be a version of yourself or trying to get a certain life under the confines of being happy. And let me tell you, life doesn't honor just that. It doesn't honor just happiness. Like, there's a reason why we feel all these ranges of emotions, and you can't even feel happiness without understanding pain, sadness, all the contrast. That's the beauty of duality. The beauty of being human is the fact that we feel contrast. Life is contrast, being human is contrast. And the faster you see that and accept that, the closer you are to living a life of wholeness and peace, which I think if you're going in any direction in life, if you do have any goal to reach, I think it would be the notion of wholeness and peace, not happiness. So the beautiful thing about humans that a lot of people don't really remember is that humans ebb and flow. Everything about us ebbs and flows. Our physiological responses, our emotions, and our thoughts, and our identities. Identity is a tricky part because people don't want that to ebb and flow because we really constrict ourselves to what our ego wants. But if you kind of understand like what it means to be human and you look back at your life, you realize like, you're not the same person you always were. And you will continue to evolve. So even your identity, who you believe you are today, will ebb and flow. You will evolve. So everything about the human is made to ebb and flow, which is so special, especially in a world where there are rules, confines, these strict guidelines on how the world wants you to be, very rigid. And it is a complete contrast with how the human being is actually made, which creates this beautiful journey of life, going between this flowing part of what it means to be human, but this rigidity, also direction of what it means to live in our social modern world that honors our more so ego selves. They're both beautiful and it creates really beautiful lives. But what I really want to get down into is the fact that humans ebb and flow. And if you remember that humans ebb and flow, you are biologically made to ebb and flow. Everything in your body and in your mind ebbs and flows. Yes, there is continuity because our mind likes to create linear storylines of why we are the way we are, why we feel certain things, why we're feeling certain emotions, why we have certain thoughts. So there is continuity that comes into play. But when we go down to like the essence of what it means to be human, the human ebbs and flows, moves, changes. We fluctuate in everything in our inner worlds all the time. So when you understand that, you start to be less scared of the fact that one day you wake up and you don't feel like the way you felt yesterday. And this is the biggest thing I had a problem with for a really long time. You live a routine life, you have, certain friends, certain conversations, certain emotions you feel most of the time. And then one day you wake up and suddenly maybe you wake up with anxiety, your heart is beating faster, or maybe you wake up feeling sad, or you wake up feeling an emotion that you don't always feel, and it throws people off a lot. People start to get confused and they don't like that. The average person doesn't like the fact that they wake up feeling different than the way they felt the past 5 days. But if you understand that your emotions are always going to ebb and flow, your physiological responses are always going to ebb and flow, and you don't have to immediately label it, it allows you to feel the emotion at its fullest and understand that it will pass. It will pass. And that's the biggest thing that emotions teach us, is that it's always going to pass. Like, there's not going to be one emotion that you feel forever, which goes back to my notion of getting rid of the goal to feel happy. Because when your goal is to feel happy, it's a very, very challenging life to reach that goal. And you get to a point where you're living a fake life because it's not possible. Like, the human being feels so many different emotions. And so understanding that everything will pass, the emotions will pass, the physiological arousal you're feeling right now will pass, that anxiety will pass. Understanding that allows you to take this pressure off and this fear off of you, that when you wake up feeling like something's wrong, it's like we immediately fuse to it. Your whole entire being wants to fuse to it and start dictating your life, dictating how your day is going to go, dictating how behind you feel, all because you felt a certain emotion in the morning. And the way I started to maneuver through that was to view things very neutrally. When I woke up in the morning, or maybe in the middle of the day, I start to feel a certain emotion that is very dense, maybe sadness, fear. One of the denser emotions, I honor it. I have to honor that. I don't try to completely push it away. I honor it. I let it be there. I feel it. And sometimes there is not a reason why you feel certain emotions. Sometimes you fluctuate an emotion to a denser emotion for no reason. So you have to remember that. And that's the biggest thing, because we immediately want to label things. But start being okay with ambiguity. And that's the biggest lesson for me right now. Ambiguity, being okay with ambiguity. The human ego mind hates ambiguity, but it's a very important skill. When you stop labeling yourself immediately after you feel a certain way, you allow the emotion to pass, like a cloud passing through the sky. Contrastly, sometimes there are reasons why we immediately feel sad in the day. What if we got bad news? What if somebody left our lives? What if we're having a fight with someone? There are times in your life where immediately, you go from a really, really joyful state down to a really, really denser emotion, like fear, anxiety, sadness, pain, grief. And obviously in those cases, it's okay to not be ambiguous. You're gonna understand when you are feeling these emotions for certain reasons, or when you're just having a fluctuation in yourself that day. And again, for whatever reason it is, this is the most important thing, is to feel it. Don't be scared of it. Understand that it's just a feeling. It's a feeling that is mixed with some thoughts and arousal, but the whole entire thing is the product of an emotion. And understand, when you break it down that way, you are fighting off an emotion. You're scared of an emotion. Try to start building safety with that. Start reminding yourself it is safe to feel. When I let myself sink into that anxiety, I let myself sink into that sadness, For example, just the other day, I was really sad because I was having an altercation with someone and I got this thought that I might actually lose this person. Like, I might have to part ways with this person. Immediately, I started to feel sad. I started to feel fear. I started to feel just like anxiety. And mind you, I was feeling really happy in the morning. Like my mental state was up here and immediately dropped down here over this altercation. Everything in me started to want to push away that fear, sadness, anxiety. But I have practiced this so much that I can almost watch myself doing this. So immediately I sink into it. I let myself feel the emotions. I remind myself, Veda, you're scared of an emotion. Build safety feeling this emotion. It is safe to feel. You are feeling anxiety right now. You are feeling sadness at the thought of losing this person. You are feeling dread. Feel it in its entirety. And I feel it. You're gonna cry. You might shake. You might feel anxiety. You might want to call someone. And that's okay. Let it out. Your body's gonna have a somatic response. And what I do is when I'm in that midst of it, I'm in the pain, the crying, I become aware and I remind myself, this is feeling and you are safe. Watch how nothing is wrong. Look around you. Nothing is wrong. You are feeling an emotion of sadness. You are letting it all in and you are safe feeling that emotion. And I promise you, if you do this enough and you keep it as a practice, you start to feel less threatened of your own inner world because again, emotions, thoughts, physiological responses, they create your whole entire experience of reality. They are the building blocks of your walking reality every day. And it's very important to not feel threatened by it. I think the more you can befriend your inner world, the more seamless life will become. And a point I mentioned earlier was that the reason why we are scared to do this, we're scared to feel our emotions, is because we don't want to make it mean anything about us. We don't want to, completely drown in it. Like, what if I do feel my emotions? What if I do feel that pain and I completely unravel? I completely break apart. I completely, start to have a low self-esteem and I start to label myself and I start to realize that, maybe I actually do suck and I actually am sad and I'm losing all these things. And that is the reason why people are scared to feel their emotions, which goes back to my point of labeling. I just brought up the fact that we are very quick to label our emotions and what that means for the rest of our day, for the rest of the week, and for ourselves, and for the trajectory of our lives. We are very scared to feel our emotions because of this habit we have of completely labeling what it means about us. And that is the importance when it comes to allowing yourself to feel these dense emotions that are so scary to feel. If you can practice not making it mean anything about your life, the trajectory of your life, your self-esteem, you will feel less threatened of the emotion and you will understand all this is information. It's an emotion. It's a physiological response. It's tears. It's the fact that right now, I do feel sad. I don't know what that means about the future, and I'm not going to make that mean anything about my worth. So I will just feel it for what it is. And I know it's easier said than done. Trust me. But this is like an ongoing practice. Once you understand the information, once you kind of digest what I'm telling you and you put it in your pocket, I promise you, do it time and time again and you're just going to start to become so self-aware of just your whole entire inner experience when it comes to feeling your emotions. So if you can practice not labeling yourself or your life just because you're having an emotional experience, you'll start to be able to feel very, very, very hard emotions without drowning in it and without making that mean anything about your self-esteem or your worth. Like I said earlier, your emotions are gonna come out either way. They're gonna come out in mental illness. They're gonna come out in bodily, pain. They're gonna come out in conflict in your relationships, in your friendships. They're gonna come out in resentment. They're going to show themselves one way or another. Humans are emotional creatures at their core. Please, if you take anything from this, is the fact that we are emotional creatures. So if you ever see anyone that says, I never cry, or like, I don't really feel that deeply, just understand that they are actually just suppressing everything of what it means to even be human, and they're gonna feel the other end of the spectrum. Either they're feeling numb, or they're feeling resentment, or they're feeling anger, they're feeling misunderstood, they're feeling this just bottled up pressure in them because they don't say their feelings, they don't feel their emotions, they don't conversate with anybody about what they feel. So it's gonna come out one way or another. Either you feel it in the moment as a practice every single day, you honor your emotions, or you don't feel it, numb yourself out, pretend it's not there, and at one point or another in the future, it will blow up in your face. And that's just the reality. Like, when you shove things down, it creates pressure. The pressure is going to break at some point. And that leads to, hardships in relationships, hurting people that you didn't mean to hurt, maybe accidentally making decisions that you knew that you were capable of not making, showing up in a way that you aren't proud of. It's gonna come out one way or another. And that's why it's so important to feel your inner experience, feel your emotions, feel your inner world, honor it on your own. Because if you don't, sometimes other people, other relationships, other connections, situations will pay the price for your lack of inner awareness and just feeling your emotions. I want to end this episode by reminding you about what it means to be human and the journey of life. I really think that pain is inevitable, but if pain is inevitable, then happiness and joy are inevitable too. We live in a world of duality and contrast, and we can't feel the totality of happiness and love without understanding what pain and heartbreak feel like too. Life is going to have ups and downs. You're going to lose people. You're going to have hard conversations. You're going to go through situations that feel like they're going to break you. But you're also going to go through beautiful moments. You're going to go through beautiful connections. You're going to meet people that you can't even believe existed. You're going to cry tears of joy by being in rooms that light you up. You are going to fall in love. You're going to feel variations of love you didn't even know were possible. These two halves complete the whole. There is no type of life that is just happiness all the time. And when you finally see that and accept that, you allow yourself to be what a human being is supposed to be, which is ever evolving, just the fluctuation of emotions and states, and enjoying it for the journey that it's going to bring you on. Life is about the journey. It's not the end result. But if I can provide you with any sort of compass, it's to orient yourself to wholeness and peace. If you can come to this understanding that happiness is not the end result, but this feeling of peace might be. This feeling of peace lives within you. This feeling of wholeness, this feeling of I am okay no matter what comes my way, because unconditional love holds me. Your essence is unconditional love. If you can hold that with you, no matter what you go through, you'll understand that it's just a part of the journey. It's just a part of building the story of you, experiencing life. And it'll help you lessen this pressure of reaching for happiness, because happiness is not the end goal. Feeling everything that life has to offer is. And that's the way I choose to live my life. And hopefully hearing this maybe gives you different perspectives on how you're living your life. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you guys in the next one.